A very good evening to you and welcome to the Nation Leadership Forum, coming to you live from the River Cafe here at the Karura Forest in Nairobi. This Leadership Forum is taking place on a very important day, the 5th of June. This day marks World Environment Day, a day that is set aside to celebrate and reflect where we are, how far have we come, what are the challenges that we're currently facing with regards to our environment, what's being done to protect it, and how much more we need to do. For many, this is a significant day, and for others, World Environment Day should, in fact, be celebrated and marked every single day. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm your host, Smriti Vidyarthi. You can join the conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X or Facebook, and you can use the hashtag Generation Restoration. Tweet at Smriti Vidyarthi or at NTV Kenya. Share your questions as well, and at some point during this conversation, we will get them answered. Once again, thanks for joining us. I am not alone, though. I have a great panel of experts in their various fields joining me this evening. A quick introduction. On my immediate left, I have Caroline Njeru. She is the Greater Rift Valley Landscape Manager with the Water Resources Institute. Beside her is Blandina Bobson, the Director of Programs at Oxfam. Next to her, we've got Tekla Chumba, the Community Social Environmental Association rep, and on my furthest left, Alex Lemarkoko, the Chief Conservator of Forests at the Kenya Forest Service. Welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us. I'll begin first by asking each one of you to give me a short brief about your mandate and the role that your organization plays with regard to environment protection. I'll start with you, Caroline. Go ahead.
Thank you, Smriti. Caroline Njiru, and I work with World Resources Institute. And World Resources Institute is a global research organization. We work with communities and partners to implement research-based approaches across 6 critical goals. One is food, water, energy, climate, food, and cities. I hope there are 6, and forests. And therefore, this agenda to us, the issue of land restoration, is in the middle of our agenda, because at the end of the day, if land is not restored, then all humanity depends on it. Then therefore, the world will not be habitable. It is a very important agenda to our organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Blandina, of course, the topic is Our Land, Our Future. And the subtopics, land restoration, desertification, and drought resilience. Where then does Oxfam come into this?
Our mandate as Oxfam is basically around addressing the inequalities that exist, which contribute a lot to the poverty that we're experiencing. And our programs are basically focused on there's humanitarian system strengthening, which is responding to different disasters, including drought. And the objective is to design programs that enable us to ensure that every disaster that we experience is not as severe as it used to be. So specifically for humanitarian interventions, we take, I would say, a triple nexus approach, where we're addressing both humanitarian needs, development, and peace building. And then we have a program on natural resources, which basically looks at ensuring that communities get a fair share of benefits that come from natural resources. So there's an aspect of natural resources management within that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Tekla, you work on the ground with communities. You are at the heart of it all. What does the association that you work for do?
Okay, I'm Tekla Chumba. I'm the chairperson of Community Social Environmental Organization based in Eldama Ravine, Baringo County. Our main activity is to improve, to rehabilitate the degraded areas in the forests, and also to improve the livelihood of the community through economical projects. We are funded by WRI through Terra Fund, AFRI 100. So we are among the champions who are funded, the 36 groups funded. So our mandate is to do rehabilitation, and we are doing it in the 2 stations, Chemususu Station and Narasha Forest Station.
Okay, thank you. And we'll delve deeper into what is happening on the ground later in this conversation. Alex, over to you now from the Kenya Forest Service. Tell us what your role is.
Thank you very much. As Kenya Forest Service, my name is Alex Lemarkoko, Chief Conservator of Forest. And our mandate is very much in line with today's theme, our land, our future. We are looking at land, we are looking at desertification, we are looking at land degradation, we are looking at promoting resilience to these changes that are taking place. So in terms of forest management, forests grow on land, and the land is our future. So our forest is actually our future, because our slogan is that forests for better lives. So the issues of land restoration, land restoration is our key mandate and a key focus in terms of the entire government and Kenya Forest Service, and tree planting, tree growing, and ensuring that we have trees for purposes of improving our environment, increasing our biodiversity, and trees play a very great role when it comes to land restoration.
Thank you so much. I'd like to now take this conversation further by starting on the ground, where your everyday person is getting affected. So Tekla, I'll start with you. What do you see when you are on the ground working with communities? For those who perhaps live in cities and think that they are not seeing land degradation or they are not seeing desertification, paint us a picture as to what it is like out there.
Okay, I represent communities here, and that is where the real activity is, where desert is, where land is degrading, and who is doing this? It's our community. We are now trying to reverse what we've done for a long time, because we realize that desertification is coming, and that we are the ones who are creating it. And we thank God for WRI, who has funded us, that we can now do rehabilitation in the degraded areas. KFS have been trying to plant through pellies where trees were harvested, and we are working together very closely, because the same communities who are in my CBO are the same communities who are in the CFA. So CFA co-manage the forest with KFS. They don't work in isolation. And we are now trying to reverse all the activities done for many years. Thank God we have Alex here, and he has tried through other partners to assist us.
What are some of these activities that you're referring to, that you're saying that you're now trying to reverse?
Like for this year, I thank God for the 15 billion strategy, that it has brought all the stakeholders and partners together to work with communities, especially in Narasha, where energy people put their money in purchasing seedlings from our community, and the same community are the ones planting along the riparian, and also the backlog. We are trying to fill the backlogs, which was there for many years, and we are seeing we are heading somewhere.
Okay, Caroline, I'll come to you now, because Tekla alluded to the fact that your organization, Water Resources Institute, funds some of these associations. What was the reason for this? As WRI, what was it that you were seeing on the ground that required this investment?
Thank you, Smriti. One is that land degradation is taking a toll in our country currently. And I'm glad that all the stakeholders, government, private sector, are investing in this heavily. And as an institution, it is one of our critical goals. And those goals, the 6 goals, all of them are cutting across food, land, and water. And when you look at the effect of degradation, one, we are getting a lot of, the drivers of degradation, one is agriculture. a lot of unsustainable land use practices on the ground, where farmers are maybe doing farming along the very steep slopes, and all that soil is washed into the rivers and the lakes, affecting the water quality and the quantity. Deforestation on farm, plowing and maybe removing all the vegetation cover, and therefore the topsoils are being washed away. And what's happening? A lot of decrease in terms of crop productivity, and this in turn affects the livelihood of these communities. They become vulnerable because they are not able to make ends meet. That also dents their income negatively. And as an institution, we looked at what are the gaps, because if we have to intervene as a research-based institution, we have tried techniques that work for land restoration, but still remains a gap. And one of the gap is finance. Most of the local institutions don't have finance capacity to roll out restoration. And for us, local-led restoration is the way to go. For us to achieve sustainable restoration, the communities have to be at the center and lead this restoration. It is happening on their farms, and therefore we saw that is a gap and came in to deploy funding. Another thing we are doing, they lack the adequate capacity again to do the restoration. So coming in again and supporting these local potential restoration champions, or CBOs, to build their capacity on doing restoration so that they're able to access funding, not only from us, but also other funding agencies. We are working with government, and I'm happy Mr. Lemakoko is here again, to build an enabling environment in terms of policy that will enhance injecting funding in restoration, building a restoration economy in this country that will make investors fund restoration. And it is a four-pronged approach, and therefore Tekla, who is coming from COSEO, a CBO that WRI is financing through TerraFund, is working with other constituents. And if that happens and we deploy resources at the local level, then we'll have massive or upscale restoration, because for us to meet the threshold of impact, then we have to marshal numbers and acreages to ensure that they are restored. Thanks.
Thank you. Alex, how would you define land degradation? What are we really talking about?
Good. Well, land degradation is a very wide subject because, one, God gave us land that has had everything. But because of human activities, we have impacted our land negatively. Land, an ideal land will be a forest with good forest cover, tree cover, and also vegetation cover. And also, it's also described by what we call edaphic factors. These are factors, soil fertility, soil structure, and the biodiversity below the ground. So land degradation is loss of biodiversity. That is number one. Two, loss of other fauna and flora, and also reduction of soil quality based on human activities, as well as pollution and dumping and anything that reduces the quality of soil. So land degradation, the overall effect of land degradation is a low productivity of our land, low productivity of our livestock production, and poor quality of resources that emanate from our land-based resources like forests, water, and it is basically the negative effect of what we will call irresponsible use of our resources.
And of course, that irresponsibility is coming from perhaps communities, from humans. That brings me to you, Blandina. Why? My question is, why are we seeing this? From your perspective, what is the reason behind this misuse of land that's then leading to land degradation?
I would say that one of the contributing factors is that people still have to earn a livelihood. So some of the activities that we engage in as citizens contribute to this. He talked about keeping livestock, even the farming approaches that we use contribute to this land degradation. And it has happened over time to a point where we used to have, the effect of it is drought, But now where we used to have a drought happening every 5 years, this has reduced 5, then every 2 years, and now we know that drought is an annual occurrence. So that tells you the impact this land degradation has had on us as a country as well. Yeah.
All right. Do you have any comment to add on that as to, from your perspective, Caroline, why this is happening? I mean, is it an issue also of the lack of space, growing human populations, a scramble for resources, poverty, to add on to what was said?
Humanity depends on land, Smriti. And yes, the population is growing, but the land isn't getting bigger. And therefore, the pressure on these finite resources is immense. The water, the land. We need food to eat. Communities are cultivating. And the encroachment is real because they are looking for more land and cultivating more land and unfortunately using unsustainable, practices that continue to undermine the soil health or the fertility of the soil. And that's why the effect is negative. But I think already there are solutions that are happening on the ground to really reverse degradation. Yeah.
And we will come to those solutions, but I want to know more about what is happening on the ground. How desperate is the situation, Alex? What is it that we're seeing? Perhaps from KFS's perspective, you manage forests countrywide. What are we seeing with regard to the degradation?
The level of degradation in our forests is quite high. Most of the time you can see tree cover, vegetation cover. But if the forest is not healthy, then it lacks to a greater degree those important factors that define a good forest. So what level are we in terms of degradation? Yes, we have a lot of degradation in terms of land encroachment. We have poor quality of our forests, arising from factors that are anthropogenic in nature, that is human-related, and also climate change-related effects like fires, periodic forest fires that degrade the forest by basically banning certain species and reducing the diversity of both fauna and flora. So in terms of degradation, we are talking about fewer in terms of the number of species, overexposure of soil to other factors, and therefore they become more erodible, and therefore affecting our rivers, siltation of our lakes, rising of lakes arising from siltation. Sometimes we think it is more of siltation that is causing the rising of lakes, as opposed to what people think it could be tectonic plate changes. No, more of it is erosion of land above upper riparian ecosystems, and therefore causing the negative effects within our water bodies.
All right, go ahead, Tekla. Do you want to contribute?
Okay, I want to concur with CCF, but I will divert a little bit because most of the forest stations, especially in our place, it was over-harvested early 1998 and 2000. And when the Shamba system was stopped, nobody went back to replant. And it stayed for a long time until the other day when we were given PELIS, that is Plantation Establishment for Livelihood Improvement. And we've tried our level best, although the backlog is still there because of harvesting. If they continue issuing sawmillers to harvest, the backlog still heap. So we now thank God that they have a plan, harvesting plan, which if they will follow, although it is biased, because some stations will be over-harvested also. If a station, about 9 plantations will be removed at once, per year. And another challenge which KFS has, I don't want to to fear saying is that lack of money to hire casual. They have few casual to do the tree nurseries, and also time of giving out the seedlings, the seeds and the tubes also comes late. That communities go an extra mile to do a tree nursery, then replant the same shamba, because they subdivide a plantation for community CFA to replant. So community volunteer to go and plant the portion given, and the tree seedlings comes from the community. If KFS can empower their station managers by giving them seedlings on time and the tubes on time also, I'm sure we can do it faster.
I'll get Alex to respond in a moment, but Tekla, are you referring to any specific forest stations or in any particular counties?
Yes.
Which one?
I'm talking about Baringo, where I come from, where we have Narasha, which has hundreds of thousands of backlogs. And as I started by saying, that we have some stakeholders and partners coming to assist us, because we've tried as communities to fill the backlogs, but it has been very hard for us because it is a huge one, and it has been there for many years. It is not, I'm not blaming the present CCF.
Sure.
It has been there for years. So that is why I started by saying, I thank him and other partners who came to rescue that station. And I've also said, they need to regulate the plan instead of harvesting all 11 plantation the same year. It is better give one plantation for 1 year so that we the communities can continue doing the replanting to reduce the backlog, because we have a lot of backlogs.
Thank you. Alex, I'll give you the right to reply to
Thank
those
you very
points.
much. Thank you very much. And thank you, Tekla, for being very bold and saying things the way they are. It is true. There has been a big problem in this country in terms of management of our forests. But this is basically is because there was, we ignored the professional application. When you ignore the professions, then you're going to have bad forests. But we support the profession. We work under forestry principles, scientific principles of management. And if they are applied, we are not going to have problems in our management of our forests. But when you have other views that are not supported by any scientific knowledge about management of our forests, then you're going to have very bad forests. I will give an example. We have 2.6 million hectares in this country being forests. It's only 150,000 hectares that are under forest plantations. The idea behind plantation forestry, the wisdom behind plantation forestry is actually to protect natural forests. Actually, plantation forestry, if you look at them, they are actually generally at the edge of our forests. The main idea is that so that we can derive tree and forest-based products from the exotic plantations so that we can save the natural forests. So plantation forests are basically buffers for our natural forests. Now, when somebody thinks plantation forestry is bad, then that person does not understand the idea behind the establishment of plantation forests. Because in this country, we require timber. We need to be self-sufficient in terms of production of timber for our industries, for our housing, and even for local use. So this is the reason. So the issue of backlogs, I can say this without fearing. It's because foresters were not allowed to provide the guidance that is required. But I want to say this also. We have a lot of support in this government in terms of changing the idea and the way we do things. We now have more rangers, we have more foresters. The technical aspect that was lacking is now available, and I can assure you that in the next few years, we are going to have forests that are well protected, well conserved, and well managed.
So are you saying that currently the challenges that Tekla has raised and the ones that you have admitted to are being addressed?
Correct, correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
and in an instance where perhaps communities do feel stranded or in a situation whereby they are not getting the support that they need from KFS, how can they be directed so that it perhaps doesn't need to appear on TV where she's seated next to someone from KFS? What's the route that can be used on the ground?
Thank you very much. The issue of communities is very important for us because just like a bicycle that has no wheels cannot move. So for us, government, Kenya Forest Service being government, and the community and stakeholders are the other wheel that requires for us to span development in our forests. Now, the issue of communities, we have the legislative provision for inclusion of communities and stakeholders in management and conservation of our forests. We also have institutional arrangement that have been put in place in terms of our structures to ensure that for every forest station, we have a community forest association with respect to that station. And how do we work together? We work together from planning, right from planning, what we call management planning for our forest, participatory forest management planning, in which case we develop plans that are implemented jointly between ourselves and the communities. Now, where there is a problem, where there are no resources, or where their communities are hostile, because we have some communities that are actually hostile, and they think community forest association is a creation of Kenya Forest Service. It's a creation of the law, and is guided by the Constitution, because the Constitution actually goes for participatory approaches in all public related activities. So for us, we are saying we are coming from a bad past, but we are seeing a lot of positive improvement in terms of how we relate to the communities and how the communities are coming in. When we now enhance the resources, I can assure Kenyans that we are going to have forests improved. In the next 5 years, I think we are going to have maybe all our forests completely covered.
Okay, let's hope so. Tekla, are you satisfied with the response that you've been given?
Yeah, I am satisfied because we've seen something being done, even through WRI, that we as COSEO, Community Social Environmental Organization, will restore about 83 hectares in the two stations, that is Chemususu and Arasha. And also, we will support our community to plant their own farm, to rehabilitate their own farm, using fruit trees, that is avocado, so that they can have something to put inside their pocket and also to conserve our environment.
Okay, thank you so much. We've got to take a quick break at this point. When we come back, Blandine, I will kick off with you after this break. You are watching the Nation Leadership Forum coming to you live from the River Cafe at the Karura Forest here in Nairobi. Thank you for watching. We continue after this short break. Remember, you can join the conversation using the hashtag Generation Restoration. On this World Environment Day, the theme is Our Land, Our Future, with the sub-themes land restoration, desertification, and drought resilience. More when we come back.
The moment I feel my pain starting to fade, it's like I'm going back to myself on a really good day.
Panadol Extra releases you from strong pain. Panadol, release starts here.
Yes, Leonardo Santillana.
Look, if you really do love your husband and you don't want to see him suffer another nasty accident just like this one.
This is no longer his number. Don't call again.
My life is in complete chaos. Even more so since I saw you again. Because you remind me of the man that I used to be.
Yes. A few months at most. Never have we ever been apart. Never.
You are the one.
Welcome back to the Nation Leadership Forum, coming to you on this World Environment Day, the 5th of June. I'm Smriti Vidyarthi, your host, coming to you live from the Karura Forest at the River Cafe here. And I will just take a moment to introduce my guests once more. On my immediate left, I have Caroline Njiru, the Greater Rift Valley Landscape Manager from the World Resources Institute. Beside her is Blandina Bobson, the Director of Programs at Oxfam. Tekla Chumba is next from the Community Social Environmental Association. And we also have Alex Lemarkoko, the Chief Conservator of Forests with the Kenya Forest Service. Thanks for staying with us. And this conversation now continues with a focus on land restoration. But before that comes land degradation, desertification, and then, of course, drought resilience and some of the solutions. Blandina, when you made your opening remarks, you touched on the issue of drought and how we are now seeing drought as an annual occurrence. From your perspective, how prepared can we be as a nation for this annual occurrence?
The preparedness that we need as a nation is, first of all, to have the policies in place that enable the government to invest resources towards preparedness interventions. Examples of those would mean having, if you look at it from a water perspective, having the right water infrastructure that would ensure that when we have those lean seasons or drought seasons, the communities have access to clean and safe water for domestic use and also for their livestock as well. Other preparedness measures include even social protection by the government so that when the drought occurs, then they have the resources to reach the most vulnerable households that have been affected. We need also to look at not just the government, but also the individuals themselves at household level, because most of the communities that are affected by drought, especially in the arid and semi-arid lands, are reliant on livestock. So when we have drought, then we have, the loss of livelihoods, the death, for livestock and all that, and they lose their source of livelihood. So there's need to be a shift, from being dependent on livestock and adopting other alternative livelihood methods, like, businesses for those that can work, drought-resistant crops for those who are doing farming, and not just continuing to engage in the old traditional ways that we've been used to, because we have to come to that place where we accept that now drought is our new normal, and accept the fact that as a country, the resources towards responding are dwindling. Like, there's crises all over the world, and the donor community is basically prioritizing those ones that look like have more impact, and Kenya is not probably amongst those prioritized countries. So the government has to look inward. We have to mobilize resources, within the country to be able to respond. And response is expensive. So the best approach is just being prepared, having systems and structures that would anticipate, the drought, and be able to respond when it happens. When we are prepared, what it does is that it mitigates the effects of the drought when it happens. And the good thing about drought is that it's a slow onset disaster. Like we know now we are coming from an El Nino. The anticipation is that after every El Nino we'll have a La Nina, you know? So we have a few months to prepare before it hits us. Unfortunately, that hasn't been the case. Like every other year we would just be on the news saying how we are being affected by the worst drought ever, and we are calling on the international community to come to our rescue. Yet we had months, you know, to prepare for this.
So my question to you again then is why? Why are we at a position where we're talking about we need to do X, Y, Z? Why haven't we already acted? Is it an issue of perhaps misplaced priorities, or the lack of will, or the lack of resources and funding, especially if this is something that we can foresee happening?
I don't think it's an issue of lack of resources because we pay taxes. And I think this is where we need to also see that the taxes are working for us. One of the things that has been identified as a gap is basically in terms of public participation and the communities being a part of that process and representing their priorities. Most of the times when this is happening, we don't have a significant population, you know, being involved. In scenarios like when you're in the arid and semi-arid counties, these people know what they need to be able to cope with the drought. But when we have those annual budgeting cycles and we don't reach out to them and ask them what they need, we end up investing resources in really investments that would not help them cope with this drought. So there's that big gap that is there in terms of how we mobilize and organize for the citizens to take part in the public participation process, especially during the annual budgeting processes. The second thing is, I would say at the community level, is just the lack of information and knowledge of what else is available for them to be able to diversify their livelihoods, but also information and knowledge of how their day-to-day practices are actually adding to what we're experiencing right now. So there's a huge information gap in terms of how this is impacting us. I would look at it as, you know, as an individual, fine, I probably have poor farming practices, but I don't see how I'm contributing to this global phenomenon that we are currently experiencing. Yeah.
Okay, Alex, I'd be curious to understand your perspective from, I suppose, a government's point of view. What is your response to some of the points that Blandina has raised when it comes to the fact that we know what's happening, we can see it, there are experts, there are professionals who can foresee this, but we're just not seeing significant action where we should?
Well, I think the main challenge we have is the issue of responsible management of our land resources. That one lacks. Yeah, because why would a person see a forest from the perspective of, you know, only timber? Forests are there for very many benefits, including tangible and non-tangible. But the other challenge we have is some laws are conflicting. We have been lacking coordinated approach to management of our resources. And that's why now the government is coming up with the all society and all government approach, whereby every government institution, every group of society, every member of the public is being advised to participate in tree planting. So the tree planting culture, the tree growing culture, the culture of looking at an integrated approach to management of our land and land resources is one that has been lacking. And that is where the major challenges is, besides, of course, legal and policy gaps.
All right, thank you. Caroline, from your perspective, can you weigh in on this?
Yeah, I think I can say, just as what the CCF is saying, I think we need a multi-stakeholder integrated approach where we are able to speak to each other, have multi-sectorial conversations on these issues so that we are able to ensure that there is coordination, there is no conflicting policies, there is harmonious, implementation of policies that are enhancing one agenda. And I think what Blandina said, the issue of preparedness and having the right infrastructure that can be able to mitigate the effects of these catastrophic disasters that we are experiencing as a country cannot be overstated. So it's very, very important so that at the end of the day, we don't leave communities more vulnerable than they were even before the disaster. They need to bounce back well and be able to overcome at some point.
All right, so Tekla, of course, it is not all doom and gloom. There is progress happening on the ground. Tell us a little bit more about the positive stories that we're seeing on the ground. What is your association doing to improve matters?
Before I go to my association, I would like to say what CCF has said and what Madam also has said, that we need collective responsibility on doing the issue of conservation. Also, I'm sure we don't have a national government community and a county government community. Community belongs to the country, the whole country. So I think if we will not work as a team, we will not achieve it. Because we are not only looking at the forests, we are also looking at on-farm, especially semi-arid and arid land, where we have agriculture people, we have NEMA people who are supposed to assist them. Also, we need to diversify and think outside the box. What can we do to the people living in semi-arid areas? Because if you tell somebody to plant indigenous tree, at what time will he or she get money out of it or economical out of it?
Yeah.
Why can't we say we look for people who can buy carbon credit and make the tree standing and get money? We need to diversify and think outside the box. Also, we need to have a benefit sharing mechanism whereby if you benefit from a resource, let's say forest, what do you bring at the table to make this person who is conserving the forest get a living? Because if we all depend on a tree to earn a living, we will all die premature death, because these trees will not be enough for us, all of us. Remember, everyone, when he dies, we use coffin, and we don't think about it. Who is planting a tree? Somebody say, bury me there. But he doesn't say, let me plant this tree so that when I die, cut it, do me a casket.
Yeah.
So we need to open our minds and think widely and use all we have, because we have policies and regulation. It's good that it has come out of CCF that we have conflicting laws and policies. Us as communities, we have been singing in, out, but we have not gotten an answer. Here now, climate change is on us.
Yeah.
We are now dialoguing, trying to reverse it, but leave no one behind.
Thank you. Thank you. No, that's a very key point. And now to the point about what your association is doing on the ground to try and make a difference where it can.
Yeah, through the support of TerraFund. We are supposed to plant, I've said, 83 hectares in the forest, and we are planting indigenous trees. And those ones, remember, it is medicinal trees, and also it's fruit trees, where we will change our ecosystem for animals to get fruits from those trees in 5 years or in 10 years in future. We are planting macadamia and avocado on farm. We have identified farmers. We are also rehabilitating the degraded areas along the riparian on farm. We've talked to the community. We have agreed on what to do, what measures to do. But our worry was, what if we plan it? They are asking us, if you plan for me a podo tree, what will I get out of it?
It's about the benefits, of conservation.
Because somebody mentioned that people are cultivating along the riverbanks.
Yeah.
That is the only farm which is remaining. So if we don't use our policies to reverse it and to give an alternative, people will go for it.
Alex, what do you have to say about that attitude coming from the Kenya Forest Service, and perhaps what a lot of your officers encounter when they come across people who want to exploit? How do you tackle that attitude of, Why should I conserve? And if I do conserve, what will I get from it? How do you address that?
The biggest problem we have when it comes to public resources, it suffers what we call the tragedy of the commons, where everybody thinks accessing a forest is free of charge, and they have a right. The law provides what we call customary rights to members of the community that live within the forest, and they are clearly defined. Those customary rights do not necessarily mean they will destroy. So they allow them, these rights allow them to access up to a certain level on a sustainable basis. Of course, the biggest problem has always been Kenya Forest Service at some point lacked adequate capacity to control access. Now, when communities are irresponsible, then that's where government uses a little bit of force. But for communities that are cooperative and they understand the need to balance the use against also the need to conserve, those communities that are able to do that, we have no problem with them. So how do you deal with these communities is to continually train them, carry out extension services, and also engage the community forest associations, which are legal entities that are provided by the law to bring communities together to manage and co-manage the forest together with the Kenya Forest Service. So the issue of attitude, in my opinion, can be addressed when communities join the CFA, like Tekla has done, together with other members of the community.
All right. And would you say that is happening, that sensitization between the officers and the public is happening? Of course, more always needs to be done.
Yes, it is happening already because we are signing contract, so what you call management agreements with all forests. Where we are sitting today is a product of a clearly and well executed community and government relation, where the community forest association for Karura Forest have engaged the Kenya Forest Service. We have come up with a very good management agreement on what the obligation of each party, and we can see that's why we are sitting here today. It is working in some areas, it is not working in other areas. That is where we need to enhance participatory approaches and encourage communities to understand their role.
Okay, thank you. Speaking of participation, of course, the President initiated the planting of 15 billion trees by 2032 to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and also prevent deforestation. And of course, tree planting is important. Somebody, Flexman on X says, following live, the best way to improve our environment is by planting more trees and conserving water catchment areas. That, of course, is true. But Caroline, from your perspective, what more can be done to preserve our environment other than planting trees? Because that is the song that is being sung, and indeed it helps. But there is more that can be done.
Yeah, one is we need to grow these trees.
Right. There's a difference between planting and growing.
We need to grow these trees, ensure that they are surviving. And again, we need to be mindful, just going back to the conversation, the CCF, about people need to know the value of nature. Most people see nature as free, but it's very, very expensive. And I think the drought and the floods that we've experienced as a country, I think everyone was quite helpless about it. That tells you the impact of degradation, the impact of not conserving our natural resources. We need sustainable natural resource management. We have very good policies in place, but they need to be implemented. The citizens, Kenyans, need to know the importance of our resources. They are scarce resources, the water, the land. When you are a farmer, the way you are farming, does it guarantee that that resource will be available for the future generation? I think that is a mindset we need to have as citizens of this nation. When you're using that water, are you putting in mind that this water needs to be there in maybe 100 years to come? So if your farm, maybe you have a river that is passing by there, do you ensure that the water is the water flowing is not affected by the way you're doing your farming? And are you busy cutting down the trees instead of planting? So I think we need a collective responsibility. We need to know that these resources are very scarce and they are not free as people perceive them to be. And they cannot, we have to keep a sustainable, perspective where we need to consume, sustainably. So sustainable production and sustainable consumption is the way to go. Because at the end of the day, if we don't do that, these resources will not be guaranteed for our future generations. Planting trees, good, but the best is we need to grow these trees, ensure they survive. For where, for example, trees cannot, the tree planting cannot be very successful, how do we ensure we are managing, by natural regeneration, reducing the pressure to ensure our grasslands, our rangelands are able to regenerate naturally. And the old, indigenous trees that were there before are able to come back again. These are also some of the interventions we need to take up, especially in the very arid and semi-arid areas we have in Kenya. Again, we need to keep on sensitizing even our young people. How do we ensure that the young people are in this discourse? They are participating, they're in the forefront. And even being able to look at land restoration or restoration as an economy by itself. How do we incentivize restoration economy? How do we ensure that we have policies that are favoring green jobs or producing green jobs, that are favoring investors to invest in restoration-related approaches? I think it's very, very important because that will sustain people and nature. Because if I know I can get food and still run my land restoration work, and still get money and conserve nature, improve biodiversity, then it will sustain itself. So building a restoration economy is very, very critical.
Thank you. Blandina, how does Oxfam respond to the current situations that we are seeing on the ground?
So we have, like I said, like a triple nexus approach, which involves integrating programs that look at basically the humanitarian situation, the development, which is now focusing on the longer term, and peace building. And why peace building is because every time, if you've noticed, every time we have a drought, that's the same time that we also have conflict in these communities. Because then resources are scarce in terms of pasture, in terms of water. So the communities congregate in, the fewer areas that are left with these resources. And before you know it, then they start fighting. Because I've seen instances where herders would have to wait for up to 6 hours to water their animals. So you're there and there's another person who also has a big herd, and those misunderstandings and the frustration then lead to conflict. So for humanitarian, what we do is basically cash transfers to vulnerable communities or communities that have been affected. And this is based on like a 50% minimum expenditure basket. So we would carry out a market assessment to understand how much does a household need to be able to survive. And then we give 50% with the assumption that the other 50% is coming from other sources. And why we go the cash transfer way is because it's, first of all, a dignified way of providing aid. Previously, we used to do food distribution, but you realize that sometimes you give people food that is not of their preference, culturally or even where they are. But when you give them money, they have that, even in their vulnerable status, they have that option to choose of what they want to eat. They have a choice on how they want to use the money. And from the research that we have gathered, the money doesn't even, all of it go to food. Like you have households that prioritize to pay school fees for their children, because what it means is that when they pay school fees, their children have access to food for the entire term. Yet if they opted to spend that money at household level, it would only last them a week. We have, and also one thing that happens during the drought season is that we have gender-based violence cases on the rise. Obviously, because the households are not able to provide food for themselves, but there's also the aspect of some households marrying off their young girls so that they can get dowry to sustain their families. So we also give cash transfers to women and girls at risk of, gender-based violence and those that are already affected, so that to prevent that, aspect of gender-based violence. We have interventions that are focused on water access, which is at a development stages in having the water infrastructure like boreholes. And then at the response perspective is also to ensure that these communities have access to this water. Now, she talked about conserving water or, responsible use of water. Previously, we've seen during drought, obviously there would be a lot of traffic in areas that have the water points. And when that happens is that the fast moving parts of these boreholes, then there's wear and tear, and the boreholes break down, and then people move on to the next borehole. So what we are doing alongside this is the aspect of water governance, where we are encouraging public-private partnerships between the government, the community, and private sector companies, where the community, of course, would be charged with the responsibility of ensuring that, the borehole is running, people can access water, and they collect the revenue in partnership with the government. And then we bring in a private sector company that is on standby to carry out any operation and maintenance to avoid the incidents of people moving from one borehole to another. This one breaks down, they go on to the next one, and now you have a higher traffic of people congregating in one area, which then leads to conflict. We are also working with the government, and this is from a development perspective, on supporting them to have disaster risk management policies. Because I did talk about investing in preparedness and response, but the government can't do that if they don't have the right policies. So we are supporting them to come up with these policies, and when they have these policies, then they're able to execute the directive of having at least 2% of their budgets going through towards climate financing. So then it means they have resources to invest in the right infrastructure, they have the resources to respond. We also, for mining communities, we're doing land restoration. So basically at a private level or household level, educating them on the importance of restoring land, how they found it after they are done with their mining activities, but also working with big private sector companies that are carrying out mining activities, just to ensure that once they are done, that they restore the land to its original status, and holding them to account for this. And we have to just come to that place of realization that the more the land produces less food, the more people move to other alternative sources of livelihoods. And unfortunately, it's the extreme. It's the logging, it's the burning of trees to get charcoal, it's the mining. So we have to find a way of educating them so that they have knowledge on how this is impacting, and also providing options. Because you can't tell someone, you can't burn charcoal. What else are they going to do to feed their families?
Right. Okay, thank you so much. At this point, we've got to take another break. When we come back, we will speak more about the solutions and hopes for the future. You're watching the Nation Leadership Forum. It is hour. More from the Karura Forest in just a moment.
Yajayo katika NTV jioni.
Nimejaribu mafuta na sabuni nyingi, hazikusaidia kurelieve eczema, dryness, or my baby's sensitive skin. Tangu nigundue the new Nice and Lovely Baby Naturals wash. Ni soothing during bath time na haiwashi macho. Ngozi imebadilika kabisa. Thanks to Nice and Lovely Baby Naturals Jelly and Cream. Jionee mwenyewe, the power of 3-in-1 Jelly and Cream moisturizes, protects, and repairs. Chagua Nice and Lovely Baby Naturals, approved by pediatricians and dermatologists.
The moment I feel my pain starting to fade, it's like I'm going back to myself on a really good day.
Panadol Extra releases you from strong pain. Panadol, release starts here.
Get ready for the Kenya Meat Expo and Conference 2024, your ultimate opportunity to connect with industry experts, meat enthusiasts, and discover innovative ways to revolutionize Kenya's meat industry. Join us at the Kenyatta International Convention Center from 12th to 14th June 2024 for 3 days of exhibition, networking, and sizzling experiences. the Kenya Meat Expo and Conference 2024, where innovation meets tradition, flavor reigns supreme, and where quality and safety are paramount.
This is NTV.
Yajayo katika NTV jioni.
We have a visionary leader to fire up the African Union to greater levels.
Serikali yaunda jopo kumpigia kampeni Raila apate kazi ya Umoja wa Afrika. Je, hii ndio ufunguo wake?
What Kenya is going to get is equivalent to what the rest of Africa is going to get.
Mbali na serikali kuahidi kusambaza upya chanjo, tayari maji yamemwagika. Athari ya watoto waliokosa chanjo iko dhahiri.
The DJing started off like a hobby, but I think soon I should make it a real career. It's been difficult balancing the two.
Kutana na daktari wa watoto Elizabeth Kuta anayewadunga wapiga sherehe sindano ya mziki huko Kisumu.
Kisha ingia kwa tumbo ndani, tunaangalia tuone vile maini iko na vile tumbo iko. Sleeve gastrectomy tunatoa nusu ya tumbo.
Na kwenye sehemu yetu ya kila Jumatano ya afya yako, tunakufunza mbinu ya upasuaji kupunguza tumbo. Uliza ujibiwe.
Nivea Pearl and Beauty Deodorant with natural pearl extracts and avocado oils for soft, smooth and beautiful underarms. The perfect balance of 48-hour protection and care with delicate fragrances. Feel the power of pearls. Nivea Pearl and Beauty for soft, smooth and beautiful underarms. Try our new Pearl and Beauty Black Pearl for smooth and perfumed underarms.
To the Nation Leadership Forum on this World Environment Day. Our topic is Our Land, Our Future. We are looking at issues such as land degradation and also desertification, but also drought resilience and some of the solutions. The hashtag is Generation Restoration. You can share your thoughts, comments or questions with us on our social media platforms. You can tweet or rather X me at Smriti Vidyarthi and at NTV Kenya, and we will go through some of your points. Now, we have focused a lot about the impact of land degradation on communities and populations at large. Alex, I want to focus for a moment on the impact that this is having really on our wildlife as well. You did touch on the fact that this impacts our biodiversity, but take us through really what this is doing to our wildlife, because at the end of the day, we are all indeed interconnected, but the wildlife populations are being affected. Nobody is spared.
Well, thank you very much. It is true. Forests are actually a habitat for our wildlife, and when the forests are degraded, then it means the habitat, the home of our various fauna and flora has actually been affected very much. The other major problem is the fragmentation of our ecosystems, where the migratory patterns have been affected in such a manner that we have our wildlife confined to certain areas and denied the opportunity to migrate and have the natural processes take place. So it is true, loss of biodiversity means loss of wildlife, means loss of our capacity to earn from tourism and ecotourism. And but the main one basically means you are going to lose in terms of revenue and earning from management of our resources.
Okay, thank you. Now, Tekla, one of the key things that has really come out during this conversation is the importance of sensitizing the public, the masses, about really why this is so important, why protecting our environment matters and how it impacts us today and impacts our future generations. I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about the role that you specifically are playing, perhaps your personal story. Why does this matter so much to you? And what are you doing on the ground to ensure that this message is being carried across and that perhaps then attitudes are being transformed?
Okay, thank you. I would like to start from where CCF left the other time, that we have the management plan and management agreement being signed by community CFS and KFS. But for many years, we are experiencing a lot of challenges because it has never been implemented. And I think if KFS can be empowered to assist communities to implement the management agreement, the user rights, the issue of user rights will increase the livelihood of the community, because community always implement what they get something on the table, the livelihood. Like for grazing, they implement grazing, they implement PELIS, that is plantation and the establishment for livelihood improvement, and water abstraction. But when it comes to ecotourism, the way you told us about Karura, where we are, for community it is a tall order, because even to be given the permits, it takes time, and they sometimes say a community has no capacity, but we need to dialogue and come to consensus that that can be an alternative for community to get some livelihood, instead of looking for trees to cut, and also instead of burning charcoal. So my urge is that we implement the management plan, because we are using donor money, a lot of donor money, to develop one. It's about $1 million plus. So another thing which I can say KFS can be capacity building is that I would like to thank President for employing the rangers, but I'm not saying they are enough, but they have tried to conserve our forest. If you go to the forest now, you can see some changes. It is not life as usual. But another challenge which I see there is that the rangers has no houses. They are suffering. The other day in Elgeyo Marakwet, some were killed because of where to stay. They were sharing houses with other soldiers and they killed themselves. So I was requesting the government to assist KFS build houses for the rangers, and also to employ other rangers, because they are not enough. Like for us and our CBO, through the Terra Fund money, we are assisting the 2 stations, that is Chemususu and Arasha. We have volunteer scouts, 20 of them, 10 Chemususu, 10 Arasha, because we want to assist our forest so that people may not continue destroying, and also to look after the trees which we've planted. You know, we are fencing off the area, but that is not enough. Right. Also, I would request, I don't know the science behind why we are not allowed to do tree growing in indigenous areas, because we are running away from tree planting. So we are planting, we are growing the indigenous in the forest, but we are not supposed to cultivate where they are. We are not doing agroforestry. But it is my request that we do agroforest so that we can make them survive.
Alex, are you able to respond to that as to why, what the reason is behind?
Let me finish and then you will,
okay, go ahead.
You will respond. We have been doing tree planting for many years.
Yeah.
For many years. And I think even donors are complaining why there are no survival. It is because forest, because we have a lot of cows loitering everywhere. The forest is fertile. and it is a virgin area. So trees are there, and grass is coming up very quickly to overpower the trees. And also we have these small animals, which they cut the trees, and the survival is less than 50%. So for us now, we do spot weeding, but it is not enough. I'm requesting that we be given, we cultivate them and take care of them like we are taking care of the exotic trees.
Okay. Alex, do you have an answer as to why that's not allowed?
It's good to know that forest ecosystems are a very delicate resource. And if we don't balance the needs of the public and the needs for conservation, then it can be very difficult to manage. Why I'm saying that? In order for you to have a sustainable way of managing our forests, the role of the communities must be in place. Without the communities, there will be an imbalance. The top-down approach never works. On the other hand, relegating the forest for communities to manage on their own, again, is a very dangerous affair. So we have to balance the role of the communities. The reason why we have cultivation in our plantation forests is to involve communities in the real growing of those trees that are commercial in nature. At the same time, they benefit from the food that they grow while tending both their crops and the trees. Now, when there is mismanagement of that process, then there's a problem. We deny the communities that right that the law gives them. But if they work with us closely, they manage responsibly the pellies, then there will be no problem. Because pellies, in principle, works. But when it is mismanaged, it becomes an avenue for forest degradation. So it's a balance. We are not denying, neither are we saying that we are going to do away with pellies from a professional point of view.
Okay, thank you so much. Just back to my question initially to you, Tekla. You are speaking about your wish for KFS to be empowered, but I want to know from you, what are you doing on the ground to empower your communities around you and spread the message about the importance of conserving, since you play a key role?
Okay, thank you. I've been given airtime by Chamke FM. That is our cultural media. Every month, I'm given an airtime to hear my views. And I normally articulate that we need to reverse what we have been doing and do the right thing. Because me, I was born in the forest, and what I see now is not what I used to see. The waters were very clean, but now the waters is carrying a lot of tons of soil to Lake Baringo, and I'm sure we are doing harm to the downstream. So I normally say we plant trees even when we are doing capacity building and capacity awareness on selection of the people to benefit from our project. We normally sensitize our community. Because sensitization and capacity awareness is a continuous process, because our old men did not go to school, but they protected they conserved our forests. But because of our interest and maybe our benefits, we are destroying our forest. But we are trying to tell them, it is not killing a tree so that you earn a living. You need to do other things. In fact, when we go to public participation of county prioritization of activities in county, also we normally request our county of Baringo to issue fruit trees for our community. And they did it. The other day, they brought avocado trees and macadamia, and our farmers planted them.
Okay, thank you so much, and keep up the great work. Caroline, it is, of course, not all doom and gloom. We have to leave this conversation on a hopeful note. Tell us about the Restore Local project.
Yeah, thank you, Smriti. Restore Local is a flagship intervention or project in Africa. It is anchored on the Afri 100 initiative. For those I know, most of us are in the forestry sector. Africa made a commitment on land restoration. And most countries, over 30 countries, have committed to land restoration and given a target of 100 million to restore. And this intervention or project, it's aiming to support governments to really meet these targets. And one of the countries that we are intervening or doing this is in Kenya. And in Africa, there are 3 landscapes where we are accelerating locally led restoration. That is what Restore Local is doing, because we believe we are a research-based organization and we ensure that what we do is tested, it's something that works. And one of the things or lessons we have learned that it's very important for communities to be at the lead of restoration. They need to lead this process. They are the ones who bear the brunt of these floods, the brunt of this drought, and they are the most impacted down there at the community level when they have no food on their table because their farms can't produce, when everything is washed away. So Restore Local is all about accelerating locally led restoration, working with local communities in community-based organizations like COSEO, where Tekla is a chair lady, working with local businesses, profit businesses, on the ground, supporting them to be able to undertake restoration and at the same time earn a profit, working with local entities on the ground. And in Kenya, the landscape is Greater Rift Valley. We have Lake Kivu Rusizi, which cuts across Burundi and Rwanda, and we have the Ghana Cocoa Belt. In Kenya, the Greater Rift Valley landscape has 14 counties out of the 47. And in the last call, we supported 36 institutions, one of them being COSEO, where Tekla is working with the communities. And we are looking at a 4-pronged approach in restoration. One is where we are working with governments, the national and county governments, on policy to create an enabling environment that can incentivize restoration, that can enable or accelerate restoration in the counties and also at the national level. Another one is capacity, because if we build capacity of these communities, they are able to access even resources from other entities. And there are so many local CBOs that are doing restoration, but because they don't have the adequate capacity or the funding, they are not able to undertake any restoration. They watch helplessly. And therefore, we come in to support capacities, and they are able to access funding. The third one is deploying that funding. Of course, the need is huge, but we are really coming in and saying, hey, you have the capacity, then we support, and that's why we are funding the 36 institutions at the landscape level. And then we have monitoring, reporting, and learning. We have to track progress. Right. We have to track the impact the restoration is making. We have to make a case for land restoration, and we can't make a case without data. So how do we ensure that we are able to capture what communities are doing on the ground? Where is the restoration happening? Do we have land use, land cover maps that are showing before and after scenarios and be able to show the difference that is making? Tracking the jobs that are being created, the green jobs that are coming from restoration, tracking even the other indicators, long-term indicators that go with land restoration. And we believe that when this is happening, really the four-pronged approach will accelerate locally led restoration, because at the end of the day, these massive degraded lands are with the communities. Kenya, we all know, it's either community land or gazetted forest, but most of them is private, where it is my land, it is someone else's land, it is degraded. And therefore, if communities take lead locally and they lead the process, they are at the center, they know even what works, which species do very well there, making them be part of the process in the decision-making process. And the last but not least, gender mainstreaming, gender and social equity mainstreaming. Yeah. We have to ensure that we are leaving no one behind, ensuring that when we are carrying out restoration, we are able to be gender responsive, because how restoration affects women, men, youth, children is totally different. How do we ensure that when we are doing this restoration, it is gender responsive, it addresses the social and cultural norms, and ensure that it is not creating inequalities or even making communities being more marginalized. And Smriti, maybe to say, when you look at the Greater Rift Valley, the county is a host to major water towers in the country. It's also a host to most of the wetlands of international importance. The Ramsar sites, Lake Naivasha, Lake Nakuru, Baringo, Bogoria, all these Elementaita, they're recognized internationally, and therefore they're important bird areas. And therefore restoring this landscape is so critical, because it is the biodiversity hotspots, in this nation. And therefore, even in terms of contributing economically, the immense work the communities are doing through Restore Local will dent positively even the GDP of this country, reduce biodiversity loss, bend the curve in terms of biodiversity loss, and also the land restoration that the communities are leading on the ground in the landscape will also provide a solution to the triple planetary crisis, the climate change, biodiversity loss and pollution.
Okay, thank you so much. Some really important points there. We are almost out of time. Just extremely briefly, I want to get your last thoughts. Alex, I'll begin with you. Your hopes for the future, very briefly.
My hope for the future is in the landscape restoration program for this country, where we're going to plant 15 billion trees in the next now 8 years that are ahead of us. And that is going to be a game changer in this country. We are going to have 15 billion trees, 20% of them being fruit trees. And those fruit trees are going also to spur economic development through small-scale industries and cottage industries for processing of those fruits, for serving the market. But I'm also saying this, the problem is, if you don't take action, we are going to have a big problem in this country. The conflicts we see in the north might be, people don't understand, but the main reason is resource scarcity. Yeah. And resource scarcity is because of land degradation. So we must address this land degradation to be able to enhance security in this country, regionally and also internationally. So landscape restoration program is the answer to the problems that we have.
Okay, thank you so much. I would really love to get all of your comments, but I am being told that we are now out of time, unfortunately. But so we'll end it there. I think that was a positive note that there is hope, but also if we don't act now, then there's problems ahead of us. And this is something that we can foresee. Thank you all so much for joining us during this important discussion, Our Land, Our Future, on land restoration, desertification and drought resilience. With me this evening was Alex Lemakoko, the Chief Conservator of Forests with the Kenya Forest Service. Beside him, Tekla Chumba, Community Social Environmental Association Chair Lady, thank you. Blandina Bobson, thank you so much, the Director of Programs at Oxfam. And beside me, Caroline Jeru, the Greater Rift Valley Landscape Manager with World Resources Institute. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for watching this Nation Leadership Forum. The conversation can continue on our social media platforms on this World Environment Day. Thanks for watching. I'm Smriti Vidyarthi. Do stay tuned. The news is coming up in a moment.